The Yellow Submarine soundtrack, January 13, 1969.
The Beatles Come to America. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Episode 16, The Yellow Submarine soundtrack. Welcome to the Beatles Come to America podcast. I am your host, Tom Gouker, along with that Beatles Guru Brooke Halpin. Today, we are talking about the Yellow Submarine soundtrack. The album was released in January 13, 1969. Before we get into this album and our discussions, we got some housekeeping notes to talk about. And one, I have a podcast. It's called Something Came from Baltimore. It's an interview show, more jazz, R&B, and blues. It's not really about Baltimore, but we want you to subscribe and be a part of that Be More music scene. And the link is in the show notes. The Beatles Guru, he sweats that Beatle DNA. He's all-knowing when it comes to the Beatles. You can follow him on his Facebook page. It's called Come to America with the Beatles and Brooke Halpin. The link is also in the show notes. We also have a Facebook page just for this podcast. We are running about 20 episodes, so you have a little more time to go onto the Facebook page and rank the Beatles U.S. albums from the best to worst. And trust me, it's a lot harder than you think. The link is also in the show notes. As a bonus, at the end of every episode of the Beatles Come to America, we have the original Brooke Halpin song, so you want to stick around for that. We hope you subscribe, participate, and enjoy. Just remember, we love the Beatles, so love us in our comments and enjoy our other creative project. Now, let's start the interview.
Hello, Tom.
Hey, welcome to the Yellow Submarine.
Well, thank you. I'm ready to get on board. I want a one-way ticket, please.
You got a hole in your pocket. Well, at least half a hole, huh?
Well, at least half a hole, yes.
How do we get out of here? Singing. Hold on.
That's the only way. Yes, singing is the only way. That's for sure. Yes.
And here we at it. The Beatles Come to America. How are you?
I'm doing all right, Tom. Thanks for asking.
We got the Yellow Submarine, and we all live on a Yellow Submarine. Offhand, I'm going to tell you right up front, this is my least favorite album. It's a soundtrack, and I really like what they did with the 1999 release, where they basically added all the songs that...
all the other songs that are used in the film,
That one went gold. It hit number 15 in America. It did better in other countries. They had all the songs. They omitted one, which was A Day in a Life. It's not what we have from the double platinum Yellow Submarine soundtrack that came out on June 13th, 1969. The movie debuted in July 1968 in London. The songs that are on this album are recorded before the White Album, and then the soundtrack came out 2 months after the White Album. So for that reason, it never hit number one. It hit number two.
Yeah.
And it was, behind it. This is a little different. Normally we talk about, what do you think about the album cover and what was your thoughts when you first got the album? We'll add, what was your thoughts when you first saw the movie?
Well, first of all, we got to put this in the time sequencing, the timeline, right? The White Album was released on November 22nd, 1968. The Yellow Submarine album that we're talking about was released 6 weeks later in the U.S. on January 13th. So we're coming off the White Album, which, as we know, we discussed at length, is the most eclectic mix of songs that the Beatles ever put together on 2 discs. It was overwhelming in a way, and it illustrated how talented and how diverse they were as writers. So now this album comes out soon afterward. The movie was released on November 13th, 68 in the USA. But, that was about a week before the release of the White Album. So I didn't even go to the movie until it didn't show up in theaters in New England, at least not in Connecticut, until 69. So this whole timing, I think, was kind of screwy. I mean, you typically, right? I mean, look at the release of A Hard Day's Night album, Hard Day's Night movie, the Help album, the Help movie. It's a coordinated effort because it's cross-promotional. The movie promotes the soundtrack promotes the movie, people go see the movie. This is all screwed up. They released the movie on November 13th, 68, and then they released the album 2 months later. Oh, what the hell is that? So this is to me is a disaster in the beginning, because of those points. And those are very, very big points in terms of marketing and promotion. I think you would agree with me. I mean, this is ridiculous.
When you say that this is something that if Brian was there, he would have had.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He would. He would have had far more control of the situation.
Yeah. It seems like they were just spinning out of control at this point.
Yeah, and also when the movie came out, they didn't care about the movie. They had no interest in the movie. As years went on, later in life, they liked it. But at the time, they didn't care about this movie. They cared about the White Album, of course, and that's where all their attention was. And then the album was released on January 13th, 1969. What were the Beatles doing in the beginning year of 1969? They were at Twickenham Studios trying to stay together, and it was an absolute disaster. That was when they started doing the whole Get Back sessions, which eventually led to the Let It Be album. So they were not completely, but George quit during January of 1969. So, when the album was released, I don't even know if they even knew about it. They may have, but they were elsewhere. And so these are all problems that I have with the album. Now I have the problems. Now, when the album came out and I got the album, and you probably know what I'm going to say, because you know me quite well, I would play side 2. Because do I need to hear Yellow Submarine, which came out in the summer of 1966? I mean, how many more times do I need to hear Yellow Submarine? Do I need to hear All You Need Is Love Again, which came out, in the summer of 1967? No, I love the songs, especially All You Need Is Love, but this is nothing new. So to me, it's like side 1 is, okay, so there's 4 new songs. And then 2 of the songs are leftovers from the Sgt. Pepper recording sessions. They didn't record the songs for the movie. George didn't write Only a Northern Song and It's All Too Much for the Yellow Submarine movie. He wrote those songs not even knowing the movie was going to happen, thinking that it might be on Pepper. So it doesn't work for me, this whole thing. The only thing that works is side 2, because it's new material. And at the time, I was a student and I was studying orchestration and symphonic pieces by composers from all different periods of music and going to the symphony orchestra. And so therefore, side 2 was far more appealing to me. And it was new material. So I'm really, really now. This is a very, very disappointing album. At the time, yes, I would never say what I'm saying, when the album came out because I played it. But again, I didn't play side 1 much at all.
I'm in buying stuff from the 70s. This was the last album of the Beatles I bought because pound for pound, I knew that this was a bomb. Not a bomb per se, but I'm just saying, like, what I'm looking for in a Beatles record, it didn't have it. I did get excited about seeing them at the end of the movie because it's the only time you see them, and they did All Together Now. So that was like, to me, that was like a video
Yeah.
of seeing them. It was very pleasant, and I did see the
Right.
movie multiple times before I bought the soundtrack. I can't get excited about George Martin. I can be pleasant and acknowledge his work, but
Yeah.
as a Beatle fan, this was not what I wanted to get my hands
Uh-huh.
on. If we're ranking them, this is the last. This is in last place. It'll never change. I'm sorry, it was number 2, and it went platinum one time. The
Yeah.
reissue went gold. The movie didn't do well at the time, but boy, does it have legs now. It has it only cost $250,000 to make, which I think
Right.
is really like cheap. Right now it has a Rotten Tomato of 97. They made the money back. There was a streaming deal on Amazon in 2018 that's unknown. No one knows how much that is. And there is marketing up the wazoo on Amazon. Right now, there's 35 pages of interesting little toys and shirts
Right.
and
All the
T-shirts.
merchandising. Yeah.
After 50 years, the
Yeah.
whole Yellow Submarine and the art direction is live, and it's very hot. But as an album, we can definitely go into it. Can we skip Yellow Submarine?
Well, yeah. I mean, what's the point? We already talked about Yellow Submarine when we talked about Revolver. You see, that's the problem with this album.
Yeah.
And by the way, the movie, the back of the album has got all this nonsense, which I don't even know if I even bothered to read it back then. I was reading it before you called, and it says here that the beautiful people, beautiful pleasure domes, and Agnes, the inquisitive babysitter next door in California, United States of America. What is all this nonsense? All this stuff on the back of the album, which again, to me, doesn't even make any sense. Yeah, I guess they were trying to do some sort of a synopsis of what the movie was, but I think it does kind of work. They talk about Old Fred and Lord Mayor, the Apple Bonker and the Chief Blumini, and Glove and the Snapping Turtle Turk and all that stuff. But anyhow, no. Again, you see, this is the problem with this album. There's nothing other than songs that are coming up. No, there's no reason to talk about Yellow Submarine. And, of course, they had to put it on there because that's the name of the movie. Of course, they had to put Yellow Submarine as the opening track on an album about the movie. I mean, I don't fault them for doing that, but it's nothing new. So there's really nothing to talk about it other than to say, yeah, it's an appropriate song for a movie called Yellow Submarine. Okay. You were agreeing with me, Tom.
I was agreeing that the Yellow Submarine, the song itself, what it does, it brings in new generation of Beatle fans. People who feel that they've aged out of the Beatles now have children and play the Yellow Submarine movie, and all of a sudden they fall in love with the Beatles and then want to know more. But it's a great way to introduce the Beatles to your children and show your love for them, and then they turn around and become Beatle fans also, and then they start to learn and love the material. And the Heinz Edelman is the art director and for this movie, and it has a really cool look to it. I think I would say I would like to have a re-edit. It's long in some places and kind of boring in other places, and sometimes it's needs a little more explanation as to what's going on. But I do feel that Monty Python, who obviously has a different art director, it's Terry Gilliam, really stole, I guess, the look of Yellow Submarine.
Yeah, well, we're talking about two different things now. We're talking about either the album or we're talking about the movie. So which one do you want to go through first? Because I have a lot to say about the movie. Do you want to do the movie first, or do you want to go through the tracks on the album?
Oh, you're scaring me. You have a lot to say about the movie. Okay, well, let's go right into let's go into the songs. So we're skipping Yellow Submarine and we're going right into only a Northern song. Can't believe that this would be a song that was lined up for Sgt. Pepper or potential song for Sgt. Pepper, but it's definitely a discussion of George not getting paid his royalties. John and Paul were making 15 cents. Ringo and George were making 8 cents. I'm not loving this song. Could do without it. I don't know why it's well loved through the years, but it's not one of my favorites.
This was recorded in February 1967. Now, what were the Beatles doing in February 1967? Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane had just been released. Again, context. George is griping and he's pissed off about his publishing arrangement, and that's why he writes the song. That's the inspiration. But the song itself could, production-wise, Tom, production-wise, it does go along with the production sound of Sgt. Pepper. I think you would agree with me, production-wise. So that's maybe what he was thinking of. I would imagine. I think all four Beatles were thinking about, well, okay, we're working on a new album, and the new album is Pepper. So that would make sense. And it is a leftover from the Pepper sessions, because this was going on during the recording sessions for Pepper. And this is George really doing electronic music and experimenting in a way, and it is bizarre. And what's also bizarre about it is that there's no guitars on this song. There's none. This is the Beatles band, right? The Beatles, and there's no guitars on this song, which I find quite unusual. So we got a lot of organs, and then there's speaking voices. There's George is speaking, and John is speaking, which again is kind of that avant-garde experimental element going on here. And there's noises going on. There's lots of glockenspiel played by John. And then John's playing some piano, and he's speaking along with George. And of course, Paul is nailing down the bass. But what's also interesting is that there's lots of trumpet on this song. And guess who plays the trumpet? It's Paul. There's lots of trumpet on this piece. The trumpet was an instrument that his dad gave him when he was young. And, he used to mess around with it, but he never played it much. But if you listen to the track, it's loaded with trumpet. And that's Paul playing it, unlike George Martin hiring a real trumpet player from the London Symphony Orchestra. It's Paul just messing about. But the trumpet part is processed and it's manipulated, which again is part of the electronic experimental sound of the piece. And there's timpani in there, and there's mellotron. So it's an interesting piece of music, and they needed songs for the movie. So this was a leftover, and they put it in the movie, and then they worked around to make it fit with the movie, even though it wasn't written for the movie.
Mojo, the magazine, ranked it the 75th out of 101 greatest songs of the Beatles. If you pull this album out and said, oh, it's a kid's record, it's a kid's movie-ish, and only a Northern song on it, you're like, what is going on here? That's not.
Yeah, what the hell is this? It's very bizarre.
Yeah,
it's bizarre.
It doesn't match up. It shouldn't match up. It's not a song that does. But the third song, Altogether Now, is a perfect song for this movie, and it was actually released in Europe as an A-side. Hey Bulldog was the B-side, and then the song has a lot of life because Andre 3000 from Outkast did a Nike commercial for it for the 2010 NBA Finals. And just recently in May of this year, 2020, Lizzo just did a Facebook Messenger commercial with this song, Altogether Now. People know this song. A lot of people don't even know that the Beatles did it. This definitely could have been a single. I know it's only like 2 minutes long. I think time has been generous to this song, and I think people really like it.
Yeah, it's obviously a Paul song. Definitely Paul. But again, this was not written for the movie, even though it does work with the movie. It does. Of course, they save it for the very ending, which we'll talk about. But it was recorded in May of 1967. When Pepper was just about to be released, and Paul didn't write it for the movie, but It's a very, very fun song, and they are having a total blast when they recorded this. I mean, they're just having so much fun. You can hear it in all the tracks. It's really wonderful. They were really together as a band, just having just a barrel of laughs when they recorded this. And as you said, it was not produced by George Martin, which is unusual at the time. It was produced by Jeff Emmerich, their engineer. And of course, he was still around working with them, back in May of '67. And John plays quite a bit on this album. He's playing banjo, harmonica, and the ukulele. George is on acoustic guitar, and then Paul's on bass and acoustic guitar, and Ringo's playing triangle and finger cymbals and drums. It's a very happy song, universal song about unity. It's very simple. The people can certainly understand the song. Musically, it's not complex at all. And it's for everyone. He even says, Paul says, black, white, green, red. So, black, white, green, red, one can say that, okay, well, there's everyone all together now, all of you, all the colors, all of you. So, in a way, I think, it is a very positive song about bringing everyone together. It's a song of unity. It really is. And I think it will always be popular in that sense, independent of its use in a movie, which we already said was used at the very end. And I will say this, even though we're not talking about the movie now, but it's hard not to, is that when I did see the movie in, I guess it was early 69. The movie ended and they all came out, oh, are we going to go out? We're going to go out singing, oh, that kind of thing. And then everybody, not everybody, but most of the people in the theater, they all, as we were leaving, we were all, people were singing this song. And people were holding hands, and strangers had arms around each other. I mean, this song is it's a lot more powerful than it is on the surface. And that's a good example of how powerful the song is. I mean, people were actually doing that, walking out of the theater. It was just, we were walking out on a wave of positive energy, not only because of this song, but because the classic war between, good and evil and love and hate, and how the Blue Meanies were defeated, okay? And the people of Pepperland came out above, and the Blue Meanies actually were converted, which is really remarkable when you think about it. When we left the theater, we were just oozing with positive energy and good faith and believing that everything's all right. What a wonderful thing. What a wonderful way to end the film. My God, it's incredible.
The next song is also really become a landmark song, Hey Bulldog, which is not even in the film.
Right.
They're calling it the best of the Beatles. They're calling it number 27. And there's covers by Fanny, Alice Cooper, Steve Vai, and Duff from Guns N' Roses. It was very dormant on the soundtrack, and I'd say in the last 10 to 15 years, it's become a really hot song. And it's fine because it's a great song, and there's a great video of the song that's really cool. John Lennon with his beard and mustache looks really scary to me, but I can get over that. This is a big plus for me. I like this song.
I think it's one of the best songs John ever wrote. The sound of Hey Bulldog is absolutely amazing. Right from the very beginning of that infectious piano riff, and then Ringo and George come in. Ringo plays the same rhythm. It's a syncopated rhythm on his drum to go along with the piano, and George is playing the riff on his electric guitar, and then Paul then comes in playing the same riff and rhythm on his bass. That riff, it's just one of the greatest riffs in the Beatles' catalog that I love so much. I mean, really, it's just fantastic. I think I found it to be quite addicting. Now, here again, the song was recorded before they went to India. As you said, they recorded it right around the time they did Lady Madonna. John did not write this for the movie, although given the characters, the animated characters in the Yellow Submarine movie, where there are these, in the Blue Meanie world, there are these screaming dogs running around, it would have been perfect. And it's rather confusing because they had it in Yellow Submarine, initially they did, and then it was cut when it was released in the U.S. because it was too long. But then when the re-release came out, then they put it back in. So it's kind of, it's in the movie, it's not in the movie, it's back in the movie. It should be in the movie for the reason I just said, because there are these menacing Blue Meanie dogs in the film. The song is incredible. I can't quite find the adjective, but I do know that that John is also playing. Not only does he play the piano, but he's playing the guitar. He doubles the guitar riff with George. They're both playing that, and George's lead guitar solo is just blistering. It's amazing, and they were having so much fun that they did this rather quickly in the studio. There's also what I've always found to be quite appealing is that the chorus, if you listen to what's going on, you can talk to me, you can talk to me, if you're lonely, you can talk to me, that whole bit, the chords are moving upward in a chromatic way. That means step by step on the piano, which is just brilliant composing. I mean, really, what a great idea to do that. And so, for those reasons, this song to me sometimes, sometimes people ask me, well, what's your favorite Beatles song? And sometimes I'll just say, Hey Bulldog. Out of all the songs, sometimes I say, Hey Bulldog is my favorite Beatles song. That's how much I love this one. And this, to me, is by far the strongest track on the album. I mean, there's no competition.
This was completed after Sgt. Pepper. Rolling Stone gave it a top 5 of all time for the psychedelic freakouts in rock history. Steve Hillage made this song like one of his cornerstones of his songs. I sat and watched it on YouTube. Journey, House of Love, Grateful Dead, and The Church really.
And again, here's another song that was a leftover from the Pepper sessions, recorded in end of May and early June, not written for the movie. It does work in the movie. Yes, it does. It's another electronic piece by George, experimental, and the lyrics are very LSD-ish. George was doing, and all the Beatles were doing LSD at the time. The song, it has a nice sort of pounding rhythm. I mean, Ringo plays a really great drum track on this, I must say. I mean, Ringo's drumming is outstanding on this track, I think. And the drums sound deeper, or they produce differently somehow. They sound great for sure. We got George again. Now he's at least, it starts with that screaming feedback at the beginning, which is interesting. Feedback was popular in 1967 with Hendrix doing all this feedback, so we've got that great opening with the feedback on the electric guitar, and George and John are both playing lead guitar on this song again. John's playing quite a bit of lead guitar here. And then, of course, George is playing a lot of organ, too. He's back on his organ. And we have, now this time, see here you can hear the difference. The trumpets and the bass clarinets, that's not Paul playing the trumpets. It's all too much because George Martin arranged them and brought in musicians probably from the London Symphony Orchestra. Hand claps is very interesting. I mean, the hand claps I never heard hand claps like this. I mean, they're processed for sure, but boy, those hand claps, they almost sound like a whip, like a low whipping sound or something. I don't know how the hell they did it. George really afterward, he couldn't stand what George Martin did. But I disagree. I think what George Martin did made the song more interesting, in my opinion, because the song is 6 minutes and 27 seconds long, for God's sake. And you need to add stuff and take stuff away to make it interesting. You know, if you have all the same thing, all the instruments going on for 6 minutes, it gets to be a bit tedious sound-wise. So then, you know, when they come in, it's like, oh, well, that's something different, something new. It's fresh on the ears. Toward the very end of the song, and most people don't even know this, although it is very obvious, George says, "You're too much, John. We are dead." I mean, it's so clear. It's like, whoa. I mean, what is he saying? Why is he saying that? We are dead. The Beatles are dead because John is too much. Yeah, that's pretty heavy stuff, George. And I must say, too, that George's lead vocal is outstanding, I'd say. One of his best lead vocals. And toward the end, when they're going, too much, and then they're going, too much, and then all of a sudden it becomes tuba, Cuba. You know, they're clowning around, they're having so much fun, they go from too much to tuba to Cuba, which again is very Beatley, a little Beatle trick, for those of you who might not know that.
I did not know that. I can't wait to listen to that again.
Good.
Then we follow up the album with All You Need Is Love, which we've talked about in previous episodes.
Yeah, we've talked about it extensively. Yeah, before we talked about it because it's on the Magical Mystery Tour album. And again, you know, it came out on Magical Mystery Tour toward the end of '67. We'd been listening to it for 6 months as a single. And now we hear it again? It's been on 2 albums already, for God's sake. You see what I'm saying? I know it works, okay? I know it works because it's true, all you need is love, and it's the love that defeated the Blue Meanies and converted them, okay? Love prevails and love wins. I know that, I believe it, and I love that about it. But this is the second time All You Need Is Love is on an album. You see what I'm saying? So I'm not impressed with it, even though it works with the film. This soundtrack album, to me, and even when they did the re-release, is a stretch because, you know, when they say "Love You Too," you know, they use it for like maybe 10 seconds in the movie, maybe 12 seconds, or they use, you know, parts of the song for just a brief amount of time. So I think that the music on this movie could have been different. The Beatles could have, Tom, if they weren't so busy falling apart while Paul's trying to keep them together in Twickenham in January, or back in December after the recordings of the White Album. You see, but they were exhausted. I mean, to do the recording of the White Album, it's like, how in the hell are they going to, in December, they're going to go into the studio and they're going to have new songs for the movie? But that's what this movie needed. Could you imagine if the Beatles were working with the animators and they were getting, you know, rough cuts of what they were doing, and they said, listen, we need you to write 6 new songs for the film. Could you imagine what they may have come up with? We'll never know, because that didn't happen. But that's what should have happened. But time-wise, it was impossible for that to happen. And that's why they threw in the leftovers, and they put in songs that were not written for the movie.
Out of solidarity for all the other soundtrack albums, I am not going to comment on side 2. Okay, so we're going to go, you do the filibuster.
Okay. We're back with the Yellow Submarine. I'm here with Tom. We're doing the Beatles Come to America. We're talking about the Yellow Submarine album. And those of you who've been listening, I hope that you're enjoying the show. How are you, Tom, this afternoon? We're getting back into side 2, I know, which is one of your favorites, I understand. Is that right?
My hands are clasped. I'm not having it.
Okay.
So this is my least favorite album for the things that we've talked about already, and this instrumentals and the other side. I'm not loving these songs. I wish they would have real Beatles songs on them. So here we go. I'll name what they are, and you tell me what your thoughts are about each one. The first one is Pepperland.
Right, Pepperland. Now, okay, Pepperland is one of my favorite tracks on side 2. And it's a 41-piece orchestra. It's very cheerful. It's very lyrical and melodious. It's got lush strings, and it moves around. It does modulations from key to key. And I love it. This is one of 3 of my favorite pieces on side 2. And that's one reason why I would play side 2 more often, because I just loved listening to Pepperland. And it's appropriate because during the happy times in the movie, and obviously these are music cues written specifically for the film, unlike what the Beatles did. George Martin composed music specifically for the film, for different scenes. You see what I'm saying? He did, which I wish the Beatles had time to do. George Martin did it. The Beatles didn't have time to do it. So it's perfect, because when you see Pepperland in the beginning of the movie, everybody's happy. You know, it's like the summer of love, animated summer of love. Everybody's happy and smiling, and there's flowers everywhere, and everything's cheerful. So he nailed it, right? He nailed it. George Martin did. It was perfect composition and orchestration for the scenes about Pepperland. And it's a standalone piece, and I play it periodically on my radio show. That's how much I love this one. It's a standalone. It works fine. I don't even need to hear it with the movie. It works without the movie. Okay? Now, the second one is Sea of Time. And it's interesting because what he did was George Martin took a little bit of George Harrison's melody from Within You Without You. And he's using tamboras, and he's using those strings, sliding strings that he used in Within You Without You. And he's got the Indian, so there's this Indian vibe going on big time. And you can actually hear the melody. But that's all he uses, which is, we were talking. That's all he uses, which is really very clever of him. Just enough to get a taste. And, most people they don't even know it goes right by their ears. They don't even know what I'm talking about. But he did that, and I think that was quite brilliant. And some of the sounds in here sounds kind of like a music box, which again would be appropriate because they're going through the sea of time. Time, music box. So there's the connection. It works well with the film. As a standalone piece, not quite. Not quite. And then you go into the Sea of Holes, and which is interesting is because you can, again, you see, this is what a composer does. And I've scored film, so I know what George Martin was doing. He was looking at the actual footage. The composer looks at the footage with the director, and they decide where the music should be and what type of music it should be. Okay, Sea of Holes now. So you can actually, it sounds like, the music is going downward, and it sounds like it's dripping. The music is in the downward motion. Sounds like it's going through holes appropriately enough. And then George Martin got the whole backward Beatle bug, and he's got backwards harp going on in the Sea of Hall. So even George Martin, the classical conservative Mr. Martin, was using some backward techniques. Then we get into the Sea of Monsters, and this is really quite fascinating because I was expecting something other than what I heard on this track, because he actually uses something by Bach, which is Bach's air on the G string toward the ending. But he does use backward tape techniques, backward masking again, toward the ending of this piece. I don't know if he hit the mark on this one. He nailed Pepperland, he nailed Sea of Time, and he nailed Sea of Holes. But Sea of Monsters, I would have expected more. Now, what he did with the March of the Meanies is brilliant and spot on. And this piece is a standalone piece, absolute standalone composition. And I wish that there was more of what he did in the March of the Meanies in the Sea of the Monsters. That would have made more sense compositionally for me. But the March, this is one of my favorite pieces. Lots of marimba. It's really great themes. The orchestration is fantastic, and it's also quite melodic. I think George Martin did an absolutely brilliant job with the March of the Meanies. Absolutely one of my favorite ones. And then the last piece, not the last one. Pepperland Laid Waste. Now, this is an interesting one, too. I like this one. It's really a variation of the Pepperland melody that he used at the beginning of side 2. At times, you could hear sort of a variation of the melody. And one of the things I love about it is that if you look at the film, during these scenes in Laid Waste, which means it's been pretty much demolished by the Blue Meanies, it's all gray, right? They took away all the color from the beautiful color animated film, those so damn Blue Meanies. The starkness and the orchestration, what he did was he used what sounds like harmonics on the strings, which is kind of an eerie sound, which emulates desolation, I think. And so he did a great job of hitting what the visuals in the scene were. And I give this one could almost be a standalone as well. So on side 2, my favorites are Pepperland March of the Meanies and Pepperland Laid Waste. And then we end, of course, with the Everything is Wonderful Now and the Blue Meanies, even the Chief Blue Meanies holding flowers, and he's giggling and he's happy, and so it's cheerful, and it starts off as a march, by the way. The orchestration is absolutely outstanding, and it's sort of a variation, of course. I mean, not sort of. It is a variation on the Beatles' song "Yellow Submarine." And there you have it, folks. So you can hear by the way I'm describing this, and I hope by my description, is that you and other people might, listen it to the side 2 again with my commentary. And if not, that's fine too. But perhaps you might want to, reconsider, give your side 2 another listen. And again, when you watch the movie and you're listening to these cues, they work perfectly. And I think most people would agree with that.
Thank you for accepting my tantrum. you just hang in there. You just took over. I totally appreciate it. So when you look at this soundtrack, where are you at with it? Are you and let's go through A through F. Like we basically are raving about a lot of the Beatle albums, but in this case, when it comes to this soundtrack, how happy are you with this?
I'm not happy with it at all, except for side 2. Side 1 to me is for reasons I had expressed earlier. It's not, those songs were not written for the movie. I mean, for God's sake. It's an animated film. It's a new Beatle movie. Give us some new songs. It would be like if they did Help and they used, songs that we had already heard, 2 other songs that we already heard in 1964, and they put them on the Help movie. People would have been very disappointed. So no, this is not, side 1 is not intended for this movie, with the exception, of course, you have to have Yellow Submarine. But you know what? They could have, how about this, Tom? They could have recorded a different version of Yellow Submarine. Now that would have been really cool, because they would have matured, right? And they could have done a different arrangement of their own song. That would have been really interesting. That would have been a very cool idea. And I'm surprised that no one even thought of it or did it.
Just the way that they sent it out to the world, was like a minor failure of theirs at the time. But I think if you look at their career 50 plus, it's definitely a highlight, and it continues.
Okay.
All right, we'll talk, I guess, either next week, or if you change your mind, we'll.
You want to do next Sunday?
Yeah, that's fine.
2 o'clock, 5 o'clock, your time. Let it be. Yeah.
Yeah, that you're on.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, I'll talk to you later. All right.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Next episode, The Beatles, Abbey Road. Now enjoy an original Brooke Halpin composition, Late at Night.
That's just the way life is. Sometimes we stop, sometimes we go. Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. Some tell the truth, some people lie. Sometimes we laugh, sometimes we cry. Just the way life is. That's the way it's always been. That's just the way life is. Just the way life is. The way life is. Just the way life is. Some things are left, some things are right. Some things divide, some things unite. Some people hate, some people love. Some people sink, some rise above. That's just the way life is. That's the way it's always been. That's just the way life is. Just the way life is. The way life is. Just the way life is. we're strong, sometimes we're weak. Sometimes we're silent, sometimes we speak. Some love a boy, some love a girl. Loving each other will save the world. That's just the way life is. That's the way it's always been. That's just the way life is. Just the way life is. The way life is. Just the way life is. The way life is. Just the way life is. The way life is. Just the way life is.
End of episode.